Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So, it's my job to wake you up. Okay? Right. So, first of all, before I start my presentation, let me just tell you a little about Harman, because most of you won't have a clue who we are. So, let's just give you that to start off with. So, how many of you drove here today or yesterday? Okay. How many of you drove in a BMW? Mercedes? Jaguar? Land Rover? Volvo? Maserati? Rolls Royce? All of those brands, all of those cars that are driven have Harman products in them. The sound system, your sat-nav, your front end, your cockpit, as they call it, that is all Harman. It's a big cash cow for the organisation, which is one of the reasons why Samsung acquired the business in March last year. The part of the business I'm from is from the professional solutions business. So how many of you like Strictly Come Dancing? Go on, you can admit it. We won't tell. Yeah. Everything you see when you put that program on is Harman products. From the mixing desk, to the lighting, to the sound, to the microphones, to the headphones. It's all Harman products, right? Some of you might want to not admit this, but if you go into Victoria's Secret, Harman technology can tell which mannequin you're standing in front of and will peer up some sales retail information about that product you happen to be looking at the time. If you pick an item up, the technology will also know you're interested in that item, and again, in a graphic display, something will pop up to say, to entice you to buy. That is all Harman product. We also put products in various things. So theatres, if you enjoy going to the theatre, if you enjoy going to the movies and you look up and you see JBL sort of speakers, that's all Harman. Cinema screens, that could be Samsung. You get me drift? So Harman, you may not know, but everything you do, in most parts of facets of walks of life, Harman will touch you in some way. So on that basis, let's talk about the rise of the millennial. Okay, so this is what I'm going to tell you. So in case you fall asleep, you'll remember that's what I was going to tell you. So we start off with what is a millennial? Because my goodness, if you Google it, you'll have loads of different answers, right? And the number of people I've been listening to over the last day or so, that's a big question. What is a millennial? I'm going to talk about stereotypes and labels, because by God, do we like to label stuff, right? And there's always a danger in boundaries and parameters that can make you fall into different and stumble along and get your focus distracted. So we're going to talk about that a little. I'm going to get you to test yourself on your unconscious bias. I'm going to think about you. So this is about skill set, awareness. You should stimulate your ideas, right? This conference is not about me just telling you stuff. It'd be really nice if you came away from there thinking about the way you transact your business and the way you think about behaviors and people in your organizations when you go away. So we'll have some learnings, some labels, and millennials, okay? So let's think about what a millennial is. And you'll find that picture, that lovely little word map, if you Google millennial. But let's just look at a video clip and see if we can see what it is.
You are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No.
PowerPoint?
No.
Publisher?
Not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter. You know the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people, like my parents. That's funny.
Well, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills, because I'll send you things for you to comb through and get the answers and send them to me. So for that, you've got to be really good at technology.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You'll just ask Siri?
You know, Siri tell me this, Siri find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand
What don't you understand?
what you just said.
You don't understand be ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8 like Skype with my French boyfriend in Paris until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumps, skim milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? Accept your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
An HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take the day off. Amy, look at me. You don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
So, well, that's kind of some of the stereotypes we have grown to be associated, right, with millennials. But let's have a look at what reality is really saying. So millennials are reshaping the world of work. Is that a fair statement, I wonder? Oh, come on, some reaction would be good. Even if it's, oh, okay. Remember a time without Windows, smartphone, and screens? Do you remember that time? Some of you don't, do you? Some of us do. Millennials don't, right? Of every generation that you have experienced to date, millennials were the first generation that have seen screens since almost the day they were born, not long after. Technology is key to the way they live, the way they interact with one another. And this is the first generation to have that experience in its full concept. Behaviours in the workplace have a subtle difference as well. So if we think about that, there are some trade-offs to access to work. Maybe when some of us were looking for work, the career path was more or less kind of there. You could get access. You could have a graduate entry scheme maybe. You could start off in local government. You can learn your trade. But nowadays, you know, a lot of them have to take some compromise. They're coming out of university with degrees and having to start in low-paid jobs, because oftentimes we don't have that accessibility for them. And that's been a topic that some have been spoken about already today, is how do we target them? How do we get access to them? How do we emerge those talents within the organisation framework? Work-life balance, always the thorny subject that, particularly if you work in an established business like ours. You know, that conservatism, that need for control, that let's keep the 9 to 5:30 mentality. And actually, this is not a millennial, just a millennial phenomenon. The work-life concept and considerations about flexibility at work is becoming more and more prevalent for all generations, by the way. But it's quite important to the millennials. Career growth speed, you know, investment. Is that just a millennial issue? If you remember when you started work, didn't you need investment in career growth? You need to have a vision of where you could go. You needed to be developed. Maybe you got training. I will tell you this, every qualification I have, my company's paid for it, right? And that isn't a new phenomena. Something that's been going on since when I started work, which is a little way back. Employer branding, labels are king, right? My kids, dear Lord, if I ever bought them something that didn't have a label on, they'd freak out. You know, these connections are important to them. They're also important to others too. And technology use I've already talked about. Economy and commerce, our businesses are changing. You know, I work in an established business, it's been around since the 1940s, but a lot of our manufacturing has gone offshore. So that's changed the nature of the way we work. There are economy cutbacks, offshore transitions, headcount reductions. Unfortunately, I've just had to close 16 sites in Europe. And people see that as a negative thing, clearly, 300 job losses. What they don't see is the 600 jobs we're reinvesting elsewhere. So, you know, these are factors of our working life. And as HR professionals, we confront that day to day. Emerging economies like the BRIC countries, Asia, these are thriving. for different reasons, because the world is changing shape. Commercial realities in the Western Hemisphere are culturally focused on restraint, conservatism, control. Maybe we started to leverage more communication platforms like WebEx, Jabber, Cisco Chrome. Some of you will be using these in order to save money, so to limit the travel budget. Is this having any resonance? Ah, cool. All right, we're talking the same story. So, and you're also tackling diversity. Many of you have women's networks, right? We already know about the pitfalls of sex and race discrimination, all the rest. That's been drilled into us since we became HR professionals, right? What about mental health in the workplace? What are we doing about that? How are we addressing those issues? Diversity is not just about gender, sex, orientation, right? We still haven't tackled everything we need to tackle. The millennials, though, are quite interested in those topics, and they will be looking to see how you are addressing those. And let's not forget, the millennials are the managers largely today in organizations. Have I answered your question on what a millennial is yet? No? Okay. Let's think about what they are. So when we look at what a millennial definition is, the classic definition is anyone born between 1980 and 1995. Right? So that's really what you're looking at. But we use it to describe the next generation as well. That's why it's so subjective, right? What we call now Gen Z or iGens are those that are born between 1995 and 2009. You know what? I don't care, right? What I'm interested in is what the rich diversity and tapestry of my business needs in order to deliver people, engagement, connectivity, and business performance, right? So, are we so different? Early careers, we want to be encouraged. We want guidance. We want training and development. We want a platform on which to build. True? Yeah, some of you are nodding. That's good. That's going to mean you're awake. Middle career, if I can call it that, we usually want that flexibility. It's about, having that work-life balance, family matters, career growth, expansion, responsibility. These are generalizations, by the way, because not everybody wants them, right? But you know what I'm saying. If we look at career change, don't call it retirement anymore, right? We want that flexibility. Maybe we want to share knowledge and experience and expertise. Maybe we are the coaches and mentors. Maybe we're guiding. Maybe we're using our talents and skills in a different way, but an informed way, and a way that can help millennials nurture and grow. Again, is there anything I've said that doesn't make clear sense to you? You can't say no. Maybe you will later. Okay. But at all times, every generation needs the same thing. A voice that is heard. A career that matters. A blended work-life balance. I think that's equally true of every generation represented in this room, right? Time to do what you need to get done. I like the 4 hours a month thing. I liked that earlier. Might take that forward, actually. Quite like that idea. Development. Everyone needs to be encouraged. Everyone needs guidance. Doesn't matter what age group you are within the workforce. We all need support, and we all need recognition and reward. Okay? So just be careful when we start to walk down that whole pathway of labels and stereotypes, like that early video. It was funny, it woke you up. But actually, there's some people that believe that's true. And we need to be cautious about those labels and identities. Now let's talk about unconscious bias. Because I want you to think about yourselves right now. So, can we click on the next one? Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, well, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean. But I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
I'm Shastina.
There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
No, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
Unconscious bias. It impacts our decisions, right? Because our perceptions are colored by that bias, how we see people and how we perceive reality, right? Again, when we look at our attitudes to people, and some of that movie clip is ideal. If you want to do an unconscious bias training, start off with that. It's great stuff. It gets everyone giggling, but it gets them thinking as well. And I hope you're doing the same thing. So, we're starting to think about how people react towards certain people. I had an interesting chat earlier about notions about tattoos in the workplace, right? And you were saying, well, we're really struggling with that, particularly if you're in retail, right? I think that's also, but it's the same notion everywhere else. If you're customer facing, what do, right? What about your unconscious bias? Are you associating them? My father used to associate somebody with tattoos as somebody who was a sailor or a soldier or basically a subversive. Has that permeated down through the generations? Because right now, there's no stigma about having a tattoo. Boy, I have a few you can see on my ankles, right? Doesn't affect the way I do business. It doesn't affect my professional integrity. It doesn't affect where I commit to the organization. Just watch those perceptions. Again, when we look at our behaviors, how receptive or friendly we are to those who are different to us. It's a largely unconscious act. It's something we're not always confirmed in our mind, because we all like to believe we're diverse and we accept diversity in its truest sense. And we don't allow ourselves to understand our own conscious or subconscious reality here, because we do have biases. And anyone in this room who tells me they're not biased is wrong. You have biases. You may not want to admit them, but they're there. We look at our attention span. Our attention span is dictated by our perception of that individual in the moment. If we believe they have a value to us, then maybe we may just very well listen to what they have to say. But otherwise, you've got a little voice in your head as that person is talking. You may not be listening to them fully. Our listening skills. Again, if you've got a dialogue going on in your head, how much are you listening to what's going on? How many of you done mindfulness training? Not many. Do it. I think it's an essential ingredient to anybody in the HR community. Anybody in any community can come to that, but particularly in HR. Being mindful of the moment, understanding the way you connect to others and the way they connect to you is crucial. If you lead people from a position of knowledge and transparency. Know your own bias, okay? And our micro-affirmations about how much or how little we comfort certain people in certain situations. These are all colored by some of these unconscious bias. How am I doing for time here? Great. Okay. What about you? I'm not going to make you do this, but I want you to think about this in your head. There's 6 pictures there, and there's 6, well, it's more than 6, occupations. Just look at them at the moment and see if you can pigeonhole those people. Anyone struggling with this one? Or have you got him pretty much locked down? Could be. Right. This is the reality. When you're interviewing people, when we are transacting our business with others, right, that unconscious bias will have you putting into a particular cube or occupation or whatever it happens to be in your head, and you may not always be aware of it. Okay, so again, when we're looking at the rise of the millennial, or indeed any other person within our employee group, it's always useful to understand your bias and the way you colour your world before you engage with trying to leverage the best out of your communities wherever you work. Yeah? So, I'm moving pretty quick actually. Yeah, maybe I need to slow it down. So, millennials are today's managers. That is true. But so are others. They are shaping the way we do business right now. Yes, they are. And by the way, there are some in this room. Welcome, millennial managers. But they're not isolated from other people. Baby boomers, Generation X, we're still in the workplace, right? Don't forget us when you target certain audiences for certain initiatives within your organization. If you target anyone, you create segments. When you create segments in any employee group, you create difference. And you are consciously promoting one group over another, and it will cause you problems down the track. So try not to get directed or sidelined to focus on one area or another to the absence of anyone else. It's a recipe for disaster down the track. But it ticks the box. Blended communities guide each other. Do you understand what I mean by that? Yeah? You know? Okay. Blended communities is about using the strength, expertise, knowledge, history, approaches, values, beliefs, interests of the whole. Okay? So if you're going to come up with an employee forum, mix it up. Because, you know, the richness of when different people from different perspectives, different experiences, different walks of life get together, oh wow, then you nail it. Because you suddenly get something that's truly diverse, right? Include those people who have challenges within the workplace too, because that difference is equally important. Technology, training, career development, all of this stuff is not just what a millennial needs, it's what everyone needs. I think the example that we had earlier about the ninjas, technology ninjas, digital, sorry, thank you. There you go. I just got the word ninja in my head, and I like ninjas. Yeah, it's a great way of sharing that knowledge and expertise in a blended community practice, isn't it? Because you've taken that rich knowledge and experience and you're sharing it around so everyone can benefit. I'm certain you're not just targeting managers in that, right?
No, well, obviously it happens naturally in the community of the digital ninjas or the graduates, for example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you can create its own momentum, can't you? So once you start something and it is successful, somebody else wants a piece of it, right? Don't isolate groups from that. Everyone should have the opportunity to participate. So another takeaway for you, if you've learned anything from this little chat today, is watch your own bias and perceptions. If you're really interested in gaining the best out of your workforce, then gain the best out of the whole workforce. Because that's the way the communities have always worked, right? I come from the Welsh Valleys where that community feel is still very strong, you know, and I know that my mum's 86 and living on her own, but if she didn't open that curtain in the morning, by God, I'd have a phone call from a neighbour, right? And she is spoken with respect, and people go to her because she wants to like that. And by the way, she's the most savvy person on Facebook. I know. So all I'm saying to you is my advice to you from my experience both in the workplace and in other practices, blended, keep everything open, let everyone have a voice that is heard, and try not to focus too much on the next spin doctor thing that comes out of somewhere. Okay? By the way, millennials might be rising, but watch out for Gen Z or the iGen, because they've been connected since they came out of the womb. And I'll give you a little story just as a vignette before I go to questions. So I have 4 children, and my youngest is autistic. And I'm trying to get him to read. He's 11. Trying to get him to read a lot more. And I said to him, oh, James, you really need to read, because if you want to learn to drive a car, you need to read the street signs and the dangers and the warnings. And he went, Mum, by the time I drive a car, there'll be a device in the car to scan the street ahead, and it will tell me everything through the loudspeaker. I don't need to read. And with that, I leave you to it. So, questions, observation, critique. I got time?
A couple of minutes.
There you go, got a couple of minutes. Ooh, now it was either that boring. Oh, there's someone, yay!
You talked about diversity, not just being about age,
Yeah.
gender, and ethnicity.
Yeah.
Is Harman doing anything to tackle other types of diversity, like social backgrounds? Or
Yeah. So one of the things we're starting to introduce is we're doing a lot more on things like bias, mindfulness across the range. We want everyone to be conscientious and aware of their own stigmas and biases that they have. But things like mental health ambassadors, so actually training people within the workplace. It's not just a purview of HR, because, you know, people tend to come to us mostly for the nasty things in life, unfortunately. But when we're looking at mental health in the workplace, people need to feel there's a trusted environment. So if you can train people in mental health awareness within the communities and support people. The other thing we're doing is environmental. So when we look at that employee experience, we're creating safe rooms. So if somebody's feeling overwhelmed, and by goodness me, aren't we all pulling a heavy load these days, that they can go somewhere just to get away from the noise. Particularly in an open plan office environment, we've created spaces. Your employee assistance programs as well is make sure that people have access to others they can talk to. Because I would say in the last 5 years, more than any other time in my career, I've dealt with a lot more anxiety and mental health illnesses, depression, than I've ever seen before. And having enough of a support network has helped that. We're still evolving, right? We don't have all the answers. But those are some of the things that we're doing to try and help. Social backgrounds as well. Yeah, you've got to watch some of those things about, you know, workplace dress code. You know, be mindful of that. But if somebody's coming from an environment, they're on a low wage, that could be tricky. So it's about raising awareness and being more mindful. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I was really interested to hear what you say about not differentiating or segmenting an employee population because it reinforces differences
Yeah.
rather than bringing people together. And actually it feels kind of counterintuitive to me because that's exactly what we're doing. Not segmenting in the sense of doing anything different with them necessarily, but trying to understand if there are particular biases, if there are particular groups that are impacted by those
Yeah.
biases.
Yeah.
I just wondered whether you had any experience of sort of different employee networks and different sort of demographic groups coming together and supporting one another. Obviously, you don't have to have a women's group that excludes men, but maybe a group that has a focus on gender in the workplace,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience of that?
Well, I mean, interestingly, Harman does have a Harman Women's Network. And the reason for that is Harman comes from an engineering background. So, you know, it's male-dominated. So, you know, that's when we do target, because that's when we want to ensure that everyone has access to the same career opportunities. And so we bring in public speakers, like this sort of event. Men are invited as well, by the way, it's not just women. But, you know, that they can speak to, like, the head of Pepsi, who's a fantastic inspirational model. But men get a lot out of it too. So there are times when we target. Mental health is going to be the next target area, just so that we can ensure that everything is inclusive. So I don't know if that answers you, but I'm conscious I need to get off stage in a minute, otherwise a big hook's going to come. So, yeah, I can see. Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Thank you.